Welcome to Downtown Sports. My name is Downtown Stephen Brown, and in today's video, guys, I want to talk about the three most concerning things for the Toronto Maple Leafs heading into their first round series against the Tampa Bay Lightning. The first thing that I would be concerned about is Morgan Rielly. Sheldon Keefe had this quote a couple of days ago about Morgan Rielly, and I think about half of it is true. Over the last 6 to 8 weeks, Morgan has played some really good hockey. He probably, like a lot of our guys, has been kind of waiting to turn from regular season on to playoff preparation and be excited about that. He's a very important guy for us. The part of that quote that I think is true is that Morgan Rielly is an important part to this Maple Leafs team. But Sheldon Keefe saying that he's been playing well over the last 6 to 8 weeks, I don't think is true. Because if we're looking at the numbers at 5-on-5 since the trade deadline, the Maple Leafs have been getting outshot, outchanced, and outscored with Morgan Rielly on the ice. Keeping in mind that ever since the Maple Leafs acquired Jake McCabe at the trade deadline, they've made a point to pull back Morgan Rielly's minutes. He's not playing as many minutes up against the other team's best players anymore. He's not playing as many defensive zone opportunities, and he's getting a chance to focus more on his strengths in the offensive zone, and yet the Maple Leafs are getting outshot, outchanced, and outscored with Morgan Rielly playing softer minutes. Even if we want to look at the numbers from the beginning of April, so even a smaller sample size that gets even closer to this year's playoffs, in the same high offensive role, the Maple Leafs are still getting outshot, outchanced, and outscored with Morgan Rielly on the ice. And these struggles for Morgan Rielly this year are nothing really new, right? He's really struggled going back to about the start of the season, and then he suffered that knee injury that kept him out of the lineup for about 5 to 6 weeks. But returning from that injury, people were hypercritical of him, and I said, give him some time. And then I really went to bat for him in about late January, early February, and I said, look at how well he's been playing. And if we look at that stretch and we look at that sample from the beginning of January to the end of February, Morgan Rielly was really coming into his own after coming back from that knee injury, and the Maple Leafs were outshooting, outchancing, and outscoring their opponents with him playing heavier defensive zone minutes up against the other team's best players. But in that same video, even though I said, hey guys, it looks like he's playing well in about this 10-game stretch or so, maybe we should lay off him, he is a really important piece to this team, I also said that if he continued to play poorly heading into the playoffs this season, that I would be critical of him. And here he is in this video talking about the things that we should be most concerned about heading into the playoffs. One area of his game that I will go to bat for him here, and it's a part of his game that gets criticized a lot, is his play on the power play. Because if we're looking at both Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner on the power play this year, with and without Morgan Rielly, so whatever unit those two guys are on is going to be the Maple Leafs' #1 power play unit. So if we're looking at the Maple Leafs' #1 power play unit, with and without Morgan Rielly so far this season, they've taken more shot attempts, more actual shots, they've scored more actual goals, and they've generated more scoring opportunities with him there compared to when he's not. And that's even true since the trade deadline as well. Speaking of the Maple Leafs power play, this is the perfect segue into this. We hammered this home in just about every single video that we did leading up to the trade deadline in, hey, what should the Maple Leafs do here? What should they go out and acquire? Because the Maple Leafs have played 8 potential series clinching playoff games since the start of 2018-2019, and they are 0 for 17 on the power play in those 8 games, and they've lost 5 of them by just 1 goal. You could talk all day long about how the Maple Leafs need better goaltending in the playoffs, about how they need a bigger and tougher blue line, about how they need their forwards to be more committed on defense and not turn the puck over. You could talk about all that stuff. You could say Sheldon Keefe needs to be better as well, and hey, maybe some of this is coaching. 0 for 17 on the power play in those 8 potential series clinching games. They've lost 5 of them by 1 goal. This is by far the biggest Achilles heel of the Toronto Maple Leafs in the playoffs every single year, and I feel like it's not getting talked about enough. And you'd think, with the Maple Leafs having the #2 power play in the entire NHL so far this season, that we'd be able to trust that heading into the playoffs, but there's been large parts of this year where the Maple Leafs power play has been extremely hot and then extremely cold. It hasn't been a consistent part of their game, and if we're looking at a 9-game stretch, this was heading into the game against the Montreal Canadiens, so just 4 games before the playoffs for the Maple Leafs here, and we're looking at who's scoring the power play goals for them. We got 3 from John Tavares, and then a big donut across the board from all of those top-end guys that you would expect to be out there in key situations. The good news for the Maple Leafs power play is that in those final 4 regular season games, they went 6 for 16 on the power play, and even though they rested some of their better players, the top end guys were still responsible for the bulk majority of those goals. The third most concerning thing that the Maple Leafs have to be worried about heading into this year's playoffs is Michael Bunting. And it's not anything aside from his actual play, it's the way the refs have been officiating him over the last couple of weeks. Because not only has Michael Bunting taken the most penalties at 5-on-5 so far this year, he's also drawn the most penalties at 5-on-5 so far this year, and the refs have kind of become wise to that. And in looking back, trying to figure out where this whole thing sort of flipped on Bunting, I keep coming back to this March 11th game against the Edmonton Oilers, where Michael Bunting had that bit of a feud with Evander Kane, and then Evander Kane after the game said he likes to dive and embellish. We want to get that out of our game. And that was Connor McDavid versus Austin Matthews, an all-Canadian matchup on Hockey Night in Canada, a Saturday night game. This got a lot of play and a lot of media attention. And ever since Evander Kane made that comment, Michael Bunting has taken 9 penalties and only drawn 6. The problem is that when he's drawing a penalty, he's also getting called for a coincidental minor, and it doesn't result in a Maple Leafs power play. That whole ordeal is concerning all on its own. But the fact that the Maple Leafs are taking on the Tampa Bay Lightning in the first round of these playoffs doubles it down, because over the last 3 seasons, they've led the entire league in terms of both penalties drawn and penalties taken. Their goal when they get out there on the ice is to play as little of that game as possible at 5-on-5, because they're okay with taking more penalties because they know the refs are going to even things up eventually, and those power play opportunities are going to come back to them. And even though your power play may be better than theirs, I don't know, they got a pretty good one, chances are you don't got a better goalie than Andrei Vasilevskiy. They'll take their chances, and they'll run up the score. Now, I didn't agree with the way that series last year was officiated at all, because they called absolutely everything through the first 5 games, and then sort of flipped the script on everybody in games 6 and 7, and called nothing, unless it was a phantom high stick on, let's say, David Kampf for Alex Kerfoot. And in the end, the Lightning had 33 power play opportunities in that series, and the Maple Leafs only had 28. You know, even if you want to flip that around and say the Maple Leafs got 33 and the Lightning only got 28, chances are Andrei Vasilevskiy was going to be better than Jack Campbell when it mattered the most, and in games 6 and 7, he was. Now, the Leafs goaltending is a lot better this year. You know, Samsonov is playing much better than what Campbell was heading into the playoffs last year. But at the same time, do I trust him to be better than Andrei Vasilevskiy in a playoff series? Probably not. And that's no slight against Samsonov. Vasilevskiy has just been otherworldly in the playoffs the last 3 or 4 years. And if the last regular season game is any prelude to what this series is going to be, the Leafs cannot play this style of game. I know they were resting a lot of players in this game, and Joseph Woll was absolutely unbelievable, and they won 4-3. But odds are, if you play this style of game 7 times, the Lightning are probably going to win 4 of them. Just because this is a video talking about the things that the Maple Leafs should be most concerned about heading into the playoffs this year, doesn't mean that I think that they're going to lose this series. No, my previous video, I said that they were going to win, you know, and there's a lot of things that go into that. The goaltending, like we mentioned, is better. Jack Campbell had an under 900 save percentage last year, and if Samsonov can be even just 10 points higher, you know, is that the difference in a 7-game series, letting in 1 less goal? I don't know. Last year it was. The year before it would have been. So the Lightning being 9-13-3 since the All-Star break, they played a lot of games over the last 3 or 4 seasons. Does that play a factor here? This group is banged up. They don't look like themselves, and they didn't look like themselves in that last regular season game where the Leafs beat them 4-3 and rested both Matthews and Marner. You know, the Lightning also don't have Ondrej Palat anymore, a guy who scored 3 goals in that 7-game series and had 5 points, and they don't have Ryan McDonagh either. I'm going to try to be as careful as I possibly can with this narrative that the Tampa Bay Lightning are past their prime. But they have played a lot of games in the last 3 to 4 years. They haven't been playing so well since the All-Star break. They don't have Ondrej Palat anymore. They don't have Ryan McDonagh. And if we're looking at the play of a guy like Victor Hedman, and we're looking at how good he was just last season, and we're comparing that to this season, the defensive play has fallen off a lot. And that's not just the numbers saying this. This is John Cooper saying this as well, because Victor Hedman doesn't lead the Tampa Bay Lightning in time on ice anymore. That's Mikhail Sergachev. And if we're looking at the allocation of the ice time, maybe they're playing him in less minutes overall to save him, to play him up against the other team's best players. He went from playing the most amount of ice time on their blue line up against the other team's best players last year to playing the fourth most time on ice up against the other team's best players this season. Are we believing the numbers, the stats, or are we picking up the hints that even their head coach has been dropping? Well, I guess we're going to find out on Tuesday, right? And then over the course of the next week or so. But that's going to be it for this video, guys. Make sure to like the video if you did like it and subscribe for more because more is always on the way. I know I haven't uploaded as much as I would have liked to the last week or so. I've been trying to, upload more videos on the channel, but then I ended up getting sick, and I'm sure you could hear it in my voice throughout the video here. But the last time I got sick, I tried to power through it and just upload as many videos as I could. Didn't really take any breaks, and that ended up coming back to bite me because I absolutely destroyed my voice doing that. So not something that I wanted to do this time around, but we will be putting out more and more videos. I would expect one tomorrow as well. Just going over some news and notes and some of the lineups and some of the quotes coming out from both sides. And I'll see you there. Go Leafs go.